Good evening and welcome to Front Page, only on the AIM network, India's definitive media organization and voice on everything AI and technology. Tonight on Front Page, trade, capital, politics and AI all are finding their moment in India. Here are the headlines. India and the EU approach the finish line on a historic pact. Covering 2 billion people, this deal secures supply chains and counters global unpredictability ahead of the critical January summit. Andhra Pradesh reclaims the global narrative at Davos 2026, securing a massive $10 billion partnership with RMZ to build hyperscale data centers and logistics hubs, prioritizing execution speed over political slogans. Critiques blast Maharashtra's CM for signing local deals in Davos, calling it bizarre. We, of course, break down the controversy and the global capital strategy hiding behind the political noise. Silicon Valley's AI war has a new battleground: Indian cricket, as Google and OpenAI spend millions on IPL and WPL sponsorships. The race to become India's default AI habit officially begins. Good evening. The timing on this is almost polite. The world is bracing for another round of trade shocks. Everyone's talking about tariffs again. Everyone, or just you know who? Anyway, in the middle of all of that, India and Europe say they are close to signing a trade deal, a very large one at that. They're of course calling it the mother of all trade deals, which already of course tells us how the sentiment in the room was when that phrase was approved. Nearly 2 billion people, close to a quarter of global GDP. So when a deal like that is that big, it gives us a lens to look at trade relationships. Who's trading with whom? Who's deeply tied together? And who's still waiting on the sidelines? And that's actually what makes this very, very interesting. This FTA has been in the works since 2007. It stalled in 2013, then was reinitiated in 2022. And finally now, the negotiations are entering the decisive phase. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says, "We are on the cusp," end quote. She's flying down to India next week, the India-EU summit, which is on the 27th of January. And you know what? One always has a sense that when the top brass flies in, usually the deal is already finalized in the back offices. So in 2024-25, India-EU goods trade hit roughly $136.5 billion, out of which India exported $75.85 billion, India imported $60.68 billion worth, clearly making the EU India's largest goods trading partner. Europe wants reliable partners because global trade is getting messier. So then what does India want? We want what the basic understanding is: market access and supply chain positioning, and that too very urgently. Jobs are a priority for India. Our country wants lower EU tariffs on labor-heavy exports, textiles, garments, leather, the industries that employ millions of people. From India's side, the asks are fairly straightforward: easier approvals for pharma and chemicals with lesser friction and faster access to export markets. It is, of course, a good thought because at a time when global trade is getting messier, that acts as insurance. Europe's wish list, on the other hand, is to sell more cars, which means the automobile sector is in the spotlight, along with wider access for industrial machinery and electrical equipment. And they, of course, want stronger intellectual property protections as part of the package. The deal even says cheers to wines and spirits, flowing seamlessly into the agreement. But of course, we'll keep that aspect of the policy very policy only on this channel. But of course, do let us know if you want us to cover this as a very special report with all the details. As we have mentioned, that India plus the EU equals a market of nearly 2 billion people, which is 25% of the world's GDP. This actually goes further than a contract, and it starts to nudge supply chains, standards, and investments in a whole new direction. That said, some caution is still warranted. If this deal was always such a natural fit, you know what? It should not have taken 18 years to reach this point. The hurdles faced were political: market access against domestic protection, IP rules against affordable medicine, which are, I guess, the usual fault lines in a deal of this size. But you know what is the biggest stumbling block, and what it has been, which is CBAM, which is the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, which is the EU's way of putting a carbon price on imports. For heavy exporters, it functions like a green wall, especially when manufacturing isn't low carbon as yet. And of course, let us not forget, what has also pushed this into a decisive phase is how much India has changed in the meantime: its growth, its scale, and its role in global supply chains. So yes, the deal is close to signing, but until the ink is dry, this still remains a negotiation. At Davos, French President Emmanuel Macron warned that we are actually shifting towards a world without rules, end quote. A world where trade is weaponized, where tariffs replace treaties, where power decides outcomes, and even the optics lined up. Macron addressed Davos in reflective aviators. Officially, it was a minor eye issue. Unofficially, it felt like more like a posture, a leader bracing for glare. Because the world right now is harder, more transactional, less forgiving of hesitation. In that environment, this FTA looks like a choice of who you can actually trust and who needs to stand next to you. For Europe, India is that bet. And at this point, it's not really about the tariffs. It's actually about staying steady while everything else is shifting so dynamically. And of course, Davos wouldn't be complete without Donald Trump blowing his trumpet. He's speaking today, 7 to 7:45 Indian Standard Time. Punctual, thankfully. On the sidelines, of course, is India's biggest business names: Tata, Bharti, Infosys, Wipro. All are expected to meet with him with polite smiles and, of course, very measured conversations. When seen together, this emerges: that the India-EU FTA is arriving just as trust is being repriced globally. Europe is looking for stability, India is looking for scale, and both are trying to finalize things before the next tariff tweet reminds everyone how fragile certainty really is. And of course, in conclusion, here is the front page take. Davos this week is like a World Cup knockout stage. We don't watch every match, but we definitely want to know who's going to be making the finals. And that's what we are tracking on front page. The India-EU deal, the Trump session, the CEO conversations happening on the sides. Because together, they point to where jobs, capital, and exports are moving next. And more importantly, what that means for India's next growth cycle. Of course, if you've missed our earlier coverage, it's all there. And please, do tell us, what are you enjoying watching out of all of that? This, ladies and gentlemen, is Front Page by AIM Network. Always remember, think AI, think AIM. Good evening. Davos is underway. Andhra Pradesh, for a while, has stayed in the backdrop. Mentioned a lot, but rarely in focus. Always part of the conversation, but never the center of it. This week, though, it's impossible to miss. Andhra Pradesh has come with scale, with volume, with momentum that's strikingly visible. And after a very long wait, the curtains are up, the spotlight is on, and receiving all of the ovation is Andhra Pradesh. The headline number, $10 billion, the commitment from RMZ, spread over 5 to 6 years. RMZ is a seasoned player with 70 million square feet of assets. They manage $20 billion worth in real estate assets. Their philosophy is to build to hold and not flip the property, which is a meaningful signal because RMZ is not looking for quick returns. This is a long-term capital investment measured in decades. So what are they actually putting in place? Andhra has broken the state into clear operating zones, each with a specific role. Visakhapatnam is the first focus. They're planning for the headquarters here. RMZ is building a global capability center park at Kapulapadda. Phase 1 covers 10 million square feet across 50 acres. The target is for its Fortune 500 companies that want a base and can commit. Alongside, that is a hyperscale data center cluster. 1 gigawatt of capacity spread across 500 to 700 acres, powered by green energy, built to handle AI workloads and large-scale cloud demand. Now, of course, we talk about Theatre 2, which is Rayalaseema. For decades, it has faced neglect. But now, RMZ is planning a 1,000-acre industrial park at Tekuludu, which, of course, will entail manufacturing, warehousing, supply chains. They are establishing Rayalaseema as a part of the national grid. And now, for all of those of you who are watching who are under the age of 30, and especially for those tired of the applying status on LinkedIn, because you know what? 1 lakh jobs is the employment figure which is being targeted. We are talking about IT, GCC operations, data center management, logistics. All of these are ecosystem jobs, making it workforce planning at scale. The question though is, why is this happening now? You know why? Because capital investment hates waiting. At Davos, CM Chandrababu Naidu and Minister Nara Lokesh stopped selling potential. They actually started selling velocity because the new policy is speed of doing business, single point facilitation, time-bound clearances. What they're actually trying to say to the world is, you bring the money, we remove the friction. And RMZ, well, is just the opening act. Because Brookfield is talking about gigawatt scale clean energy. Google Cloud is fast-tracking the Vizag data center. And then there is, of course, IBM, quantum computing, and AI training. And NVIDIA are, of course, talking about an AI university in Amravati, skilling the actual future. Andhra is telling these giants exactly where to settle and make a mark. Vizag for digital, Rayalaseema for industry, Amravati for governance. And now, of course, as always, here is the front page take. The world feels unsettled right now because geopolitics is uneasy. Inflation is causing a lot of grief, which makes capital very, very cautious. But it is noteworthy that in the middle of all of that, Andhra Pradesh is offering clarity. One state, clear vision, clear ownership. It's ambitious, no doubt, and risk is of course part of the deal. But thankfully, the commitments are in place. And from here on, the story will start to take shape on the ground instead of in the headlines. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Front Page on the AIM network. And as always, think AI, think AIM. Good evening. So if you see our previous coverages, we have covered how each state is competing for investments. But one question has been very alarming. Why do Indian CMs go to Davos and sign MOUs with Indian companies? Why take an Indian company to Switzerland to sign an MOU? A question that, well, would strike many. This comes after Maharashtra CM Devendra Fadnavis announced the signing of MOUs in Davos with Indian companies. This debate blew up after Congress called it a bizarre event, asking why the Maharashtra CM signed an MOU in Davos with an Indian firm and whether there was some hidden meaning. And to be fair, on the surface, it does look a little odd. If the company is Indian, the state is Indian, the jobs are in India, then why fly to Davos? Makes sense, no? But of course, when we analyze the narrative wars here, and if we look closer, the logic actually changes. Here is the thing about Davos. It is a stage. If you sign a deal in Mumbai, you get a local headline. You get a pat on the back, but the money still stays local. The narrative stays small. But when you sign that same deal in Davos, the audience changes. You are no longer competing with Karnataka or Gujarat. You are actually competing with Vietnam, and Indonesia, Mexico. The signature is just actually optics. The location actually is the real strategy. It signals to the world this state operates on global time. Now, of course, for the elephant in the room, the Indian company controversy. Critics ask, why sign with an Indian builder in Switzerland? Here is, of course, the cold, hard financial reality. The company might be Indian, but you know what? The wallet behind them, well, that is more often than not global. Because we need to realize that we are talking about hyperscale data centers, clean energy grids, logistics corridors. These projects need billions. They need long-term debt. They need sovereign funds. They need dollars on top of the rupees, of course. So when a CM stands next to an Indian CEO in Davos, they are broadcasting a message to the global banks who are probably present in the room. They are saying, this project is bankable, it is safe, please put your billions here. Fadnavis unveiled big numbers yesterday. 19 MOUs, 14.5 lakh crore rupees, roughly $170 billion. And the deal that triggered the fight, Lodha developers, an Indian realty giant. They pledged 1.3 lakh crore rupees for a data center park near Mumbai. Critics see a local builder. Investors actually see a 2.5 gigawatt digital engine. In the world of AI and cloud computing, 2.5 gigawatts is more than just real estate. It is the oil of the future. And Fadnavis is pitching a third Mumbai. He's, of course, talking to HPE about AI, to Maersk about supply chain, with the World Bank president for green corridors, Hyundai for hydrogen mobility, making this one platform for multiple sectors. And you know, there is a truth nobody in politics likes to admit. An MOU is not a contract. It is actually just a promise. It is an intent to invest. And actually, if we understand our history, Indian summits are littered with MOUs that never turned into factories. The narrative war is won in Davos, fabulous. But the economic war is won on the ground. So I feel it is a waste of time to wonder why did they go to Switzerland. I think we should actually concentrate our energies to wonder In 2 years, will we see excavators digging the ground? Because accountability is imperative, ladies and gentlemen. Please let us know what you think in the comments below. This is Front Page. Like, share, subscribe, and always remember, think AI, think AIM. Good evening. So if you're looking at the scoreboard, don't waste your time, because the real game isn't happening on the pitch at Wankhede, Chinnaswamy or Eden. It is a nail-biter taking place on the boundary boards. Yes, you heard that right. Cricket in India has been simple and beautiful. It is an emotion, an identity, a religion. Last season, the IPL touched 1 billion lives. TV, digital, pretty much everywhere. The WPL, well, which is riding on the World Cup high, growing faster than a tech stock. And you know what? The sponsors are changing. The cola wars are dead. The soap operas are long gone. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the AI wars. So if you're ready, in the blue corner, Google. Gemini just declared a massive number, approximately 270 crore rupees for 3 years. IPL sponsorship, entailing hoardings, backdrops, prime time real estate. And now, in the red corner, OpenAI, the disruptor. They have made their way onto the field months ago, a 2-year deal. Women's Premier League. Different tournaments, identical ambition. Their fight has moved beyond San Francisco to Bengaluru, to Mumbai, and well, also in your living room. Why, you ask? Because India is beyond the market. It's actually the prize. But why cricket? Why now? Because it's about habit. AI is cool, but it's not a daily utility for everyone as yet. These giants need to become our muscle memory. Cricket delivers what Silicon Valley can't buy with algorithms. Unmatched reach, 1 billion eyeballs, and above all, trust. We watch with our families and we trust the brand next to our favorite captain, and they want to be the AI you use, the default, if you will. Looking at OpenAI's play, they are scaling fast. Revenue crossed $20 billion annualized. Sounds huge, right? But the burn rate is also very explosive. Computing costs are eating them alive. And here is, of course, the very interesting part. Ads are coming. They are already testing them in ChatGPT. India is their largest active user base. They need to bridge the gap. So from cool party trick to everyday necessity. From a research lab to a consumer giant. And cricket gives them the cultural legitimacy. When the ads finally roll out, they need you to actually recognize the logo. Now, if we look at Google, Demis Hassabis stood at Davos and said this: Gemini won't show ads, end quote. At least, not inside the chat. But you know what? Don't let that fool you. Google plays a more calculated game. Gemini is already in your pocket. Search, Android, Gmail, Workspace. They don't need ad revenue from the bot. They need you to stay in the Google universe. Gemini is ad supported. The ads just don't appear on Gemini. Quite clever, I thought. The IPL deal, of course, reinforces dominance. It's distribution theater. Keep the brand visible, keep the users passive, win by default. Now, do you see the pattern? Fantasy gaming used to own these spots, Dream 11, MPL. Then, of course, regulation hit, taxes hit. 7,000 crore rupees pulled out of the ecosystem. A vacuum opened up. Traditional advertisers got cautious. Who stepped in? The AI platforms. AI is the new fantasy sports. But the ambition is terrifyingly larger. This isn't just about picking a team. This is about becoming the operating system for intelligence. Both sides know the truth. The marginal user in India is the cheapest to acquire, but they define the global winner. Whoever wins the Indian recall wins, yes, you've guessed it, the decade. And here, of course, is the front page take. So, the next time you see a 6 hit into the stands and ball hits an AI logo, understand what you are seeing. It's not sponsorship, it's positioning. They are buying your familiarity. They are, of course, renting your attention. The revenue comes later, my friends. The logos today are for the habits of tomorrow. India is the pitch and the match it's just getting started. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Front Page. Like, share, subscribe, and always remember, think AI, think AIM. We'll take a short little break, and we'll be back with lots more only on Front Page. Good evening and welcome to Front Page. So in a letter to shareholders, Goyal made his reasoning absolutely crystal clear. He wants to pursue high-risk experimental ideas that don't belong inside a listed public company. He says eternal needs, focus, discipline, predictable execution, and India's public markets demand singular attention from a CEO. So instead of splitting time, he's stepping back from day-to-day control, which means Eternal gets operational clarity. Goyal gets, we'll take a small little break because of a slight technical issue. We'll be right back on Front Page. $1,700 GCCs. Yes, that's the present footprint in India of the global population of GCCs. $1.9 million people are gainfully employed in these global capability centers. $64.6 billion was generated in the fiscal year 2024. But the big target, that's 2030. 2,200 GCCs is what India wants to notch up to, employing more than 2.8 million people.
I wrote in my book that failures were in bold font for me and success was like default.
If you really want to control the narrative of life, you can do no wrong.
The people who focus on success and, sort of brush away failure, like a Virat Kohli is a great example.
everyone is doing a great job in bringing the GCC ecosystem together.
So you're adding a lot of value to the GCC ecosystem.
Oh, I had to take a beat and sit down to make sense of this amazing roller coaster ride that we've had at MachineCon 2025. We will catch you again at the next MachineCon. Yep. Good evening and welcome to Front Page. Dipinder Goyal has resigned as CEO of Eternal. Yes, as Group Eternal CEO, the parent company of Zomato and Blinkit. Taking over the top job from February 1st is Albinder Dhindsa, the founder and CEO of Blinkit. Goyal will remain vice chairman and board member subject to shareholder approval. This is definitely not a sudden exit. This is a deliberate handover of power. In a letter to shareholders, Goyal made his reasoning clear. He wants to pursue high-risk experimental ideas that don't belong inside a listed public company. He says Eternal needs focus, discipline, predictable execution, and India's public markets demand singular attention from a CEO. So instead of splitting time, he's stepping back from day-to-day control, which means Eternal gets operational clarity. Goyal gets intellectual freedom. So what has this development done to the organization structure? Albinder Dhindsa now owns day-to-day execution, operating priorities, business decisions across the group. All business CEOs, though, continue to operate with full autonomy. Eternal's decentralized structure remains intact. As far as Goyal is concerned, he stays involved in long-term strategy, culture, leadership development, ethics, and governance, marking a very clean divide in execution versus exploration. This promotion is for a reason. Under Dhindsa, Blinkit went from a very struggling acquisition to break even. He rebuilt the supply chain, store density, operating rhythm, unit economics, and of course, Goyal himself says Dhindsa's execution ability exceeds his own. And of course, we need to remember this context. After Zomato acquired Blinkit in 2022 for 4,447 crore rupees, Goyal asked Dhindsa to step down twice, and that too publicly, on a podcast. As part of what he calls a rock-bottom leadership reset, which makes today's announcement carry a lot more weight. From you won't cut it to you run the group. Blinkit is now officially Eternal's largest growth engine. Albinder's top priority, quick commerce, is the growth narrative. Zomato is stable, Blinkit is aggressive. Eternal is betting on speed plus discipline, one critical signal to markets and the employees together. All of Goyal's unvested ESOPs revert to the ESOP pool. No incremental shareholder dilution, more equity available for the next generation of leaders. And that's very rare and also very intentional. Outside Eternal, Goyal has already been active, invested $20 million in LAT Aerospace, launched Continue, a longevity and wellness research venture, and of course, recently teased Temple, a wearable device to monitor brain-blood flow. This move formalizes what was already happening, which is a founder institutionalizing the company he built. Goyal's closing line, this is it. This is a change in title, not in commitment. Eternal remains my life's work, end quote. So for the markets, this is about clarity. For employees, it's about continuity. For Eternal, it's a bet that execution wins the next decade. And now, of course, here is the front page take. Eternal is choosing professionalized execution over founder centrality. Blinkit over comfort, focus over, well, charisma. And Albinder Dhindsa is now holding the steering wheel. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Front Page by AIM Network. Like, share, subscribe. And of course, always remember, news like this, we break on Front Page. To stay ahead of the curve, keep watching. And always remember, think AI, think AIM.